So in the next few lectures, I want to talk about this idea of transformative experience and the problems that it seems to create. The idea here builds off of an argument like Nagel's. In the piece I gave you guys, Paul doesn't talk about Nagel. She talks about this other philosopher, Frank Jackson. But in her longer work, she does mention Nagel, and I think she kind of builds on Nagel's ideas. He's an obvious influence. And, the idea here is, remember Nagel said there's certain kinds of experience, what it's like to be a bat. I talked about some others, what it's like to be a dog, an octopus, an eagle, right? Where we don't know what it is like. And we really can't know what it's like, right? So Paul builds on this and she says, well, there's a lot of human experience where it doesn't seem we can know what it's like, and this creates a problem for us. So she mentions Jackson, who I think has a similar idea to Nagel's. Jackson's just, if you've never seen color before at all, imagine somebody who's only ever seen black and white somehow. I don't know how that would happen, but imagine, right? Or just imagine that they cannot see a certain color like red. We keep them from ever seeing red, then suddenly they see red. They'll know something new. They'll know what it's like, right? The idea is you could read as much about red as you want. You couldn't imagine this radically new experience of seeing it, right? Well, Paul will say there's a similar thing going on with other human experiences. If you haven't had a certain taste before, you can't really imagine what it's like, she'll say. She mentions Vegemite, right? So the idea is we don't know what these unfamiliar experiences are like, and our imagination just totally fails, right? If you've never seen red, Nagel mentions this too, we can tell you, we can try to describe it, you're just not going to get it, right? To know what it's like, you need the experience. Imagination's just not going to get you there. So Paul thinks that this creates problems for choice, right? So Paul will say, she has a lot of fancy stuff going on here. She talks about rational choice theory. I think she kind of gets in the weeds with that. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next lecture, but I think you can mostly overlook that kind of stuff. You don't need to get too far into it. But part of her idea is, well, to know whether a choice is a good one and to know how good the choice is, we have to know what the experiences it brings with it is like, right? If you're ordering in a restaurant and you're deciding between two dishes, you have to know what it's like to taste each one, or at least have some idea before you can choose, right? You need to know what the taste is like, what it's like to eat this. If you have no idea, you couldn't really choose, right? Paul will say experiences are like that generally. She'll also say, well, if you can't know what an unfamiliar experience is like, you can't do this, right? If you don't know what the experience is like, you don't know how good or bad the experience is. You can't really put any kind of value to it. So Paul says, well, this makes it impossible to make a rationally justified choice with these radically unfamiliar experiences. In the piece I gave you guys, she focuses on parenthood as her example. She thinks the point generalizes, the problem generalizes, and it really creates a problem for a lot of different kinds of choice. She has an entire book on this. It's pretty influential. It's gotten a lot of press outside of philosophy. This article she wrote, I think a little bit before the book. The book takes the themes a lot further, but the article kind of gives the basic ideas. So what I want to do in the next lecture is to just dig a lot deeper with what her actual argument is. I'll actually do that in the next couple lectures. And then in the couple lectures after that, we'll talk about some criticisms of her argument.